Welcome to the panel on entrepreneurship. Right beside me we have Andrew Hunt, an entrepreneur specialized in the production of superfoods across Africa. He'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. Alex, an entrepreneur based out of Angola mostly, but rapidly expanding across the continent as well. Right beside Alex we have ADEBOLA, who does a number of things. He's an entrepreneur. I've just learned he's also responsible for the election of not only the Nigerian president as well as the Ghanaian president. I'll leave it up to you during the tea break to ask him whether or not that was a good idea. It certainly is a sign of his achievements. Besides ADEBOLA, we have Tracy, an impact investor, and at the far end of the table, ADNANE, who's a social entrepreneur based out of Morocco, but very much focused on the rest of the continent as well. In the room we have a number of successful and ambitious entrepreneurs. I do want to mention one individual in particular. Here in the front row we have Dr. Oba Otedeko, chairman of Honeywell. Dr. Otedeko, thank you very much for joining us. Panel, let's get going. Entrepreneurship is all about solving problems. So rather than lengthy introductions, can I ask each one of you to spend about 2 minutes on explaining the specific problem you're solving through your businesses or through investing in businesses? Andrew, starting with you.
So I'm co-founder of a business called ADDIOUI, and ADDIOUI is an Africa-inspired health food brand and social business. And the problem that we are solving is really a social problem, which is the disconnectedness from market of small-scale producers in rural Africa. More than 25% of the world's botanical species originate from Africa, and less than 1% of what's sold in the global health and wellness industry, which is valued at $1 trillion in 2017. So there's the need to connect those producers to that market, which is mainly for what are known as clean label products like superfoods, teas, fruits and nuts. So our business actively connects those small producers into the market, and we do that by helping to build the value chain from rural Africa, working in partnership with small producers in different parts of Africa. And most importantly, though, is actually the creation of the market for products that people in this part of the world have never heard of, like baobab fruit and moringa leaf and various others that are in our pipeline.
Thanks, Andrew. Alex, over to you.
Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Alexander Thompson. I'm the founder of TGI. TGI today calls herself a holding and investment company. Truth is just serial entrepreneurs. And the problem we're solving, I guess, is just, seeing all the different opportunities in Africa. And what you have in Africa is a lot of problems just because of lack of development, and which creates a lot of opportunities. So we're focused on the telecommunications sector. We're the largest mobile phone and airtime distributors in Angola. So I guess the problem we're solving there is bringing mobile phones at a more accessible price. We've now developed our own brand called 7 Mobile, which focuses on the African market. So we have a phone with a 30-day battery. We're producing Android phones for $22 now, tablets for $36 now, just making it accessible for the African market, and as opposed to what Samsung and LG and the big manufacturers do are going higher and higher end, we saw the opportunity of focusing on the lower end when the majority of our population is in the lower economic stratosphere, I guess. Then we have ESS, which is a petroleum services company. What we've done there is create a local Angolan company which provides services to all the major oil and gas players, Chevron, BP, Schlumberger, Halliburton. And what we've done there is, once again, just try to provide a quality service from a local company, not trying to take advantage of the fact that they don't know what they're doing there. And lastly, we entered the hotel industry. We have a group of hotels called Thompson House, which just, once again, trying to create accessible, affordable, good quality hotels. The average hotel in Angola used to be around $400 a night. So we were able to create good standard hotel space for same clients at a much more affordable rate.
Thanks. ADEBOLA.
Hi, my name is Paula Williams, and our work focuses on social regeneration. It's a long, long story, so I'm going to try to be brief. We started out 12 years ago trying to deal with the problems of hopelessness and helplessness on the African continent, beginning with Nigeria, where young people do not see a reason why they should do good for themselves, and they do not feel any levers of hope from the help from the government, unlike when you're in the West, where you don't have a job, you get some stipend, society protects you of some sort. So we started out with something called the Future Awards, where we find young people who are doing well despite the limitations of the continent, and use them as strong positive images to create a critical mass of young people who are empowered. And so in the last 12 years, we have a new cadre of young people in Nigeria who are the voices of the country, and they've come from the Future Awards. We also then took it a step further to build those young people into pressure groups to hold government accountable. So first you give them hope so they can get jobs, so they can become business owners, can become inventors, innovators, and have something to do for themselves, and then not be pawns for government. Then next, you move them into active citizenship, where they can actually hold the systems of government in Nigeria, in Ghana, anywhere in the world, anywhere on the continent, accountable, so government can do what they're supposed to do to help make their lives better. So we founded a number of things, Enough is Enough, and amongst other platforms in Nigeria. And then thirdly, we then moved on to begin to work in elections. So 1 minute you empower young people, the next minute you make them active citizens to hold government accountable. And then on the third phase, help governments win elections, governments that are popular. So in Nigeria, when Buhari won at the time, Andrew, he was popular. Because people wanted the guy who was there to go. He had been labeled clueless, he had been labeled incompetent, and the people were asking for change. Now, he was the candidate we worked with. In Ghana, the same scenario. The guy there was also labeled incompetent, corrupt, amongst other things, and the people were asking for change. What we do is to help take a candidate that the people are asking for, but looks unelectable, and help him with messaging that can connect him with the popular anger and help him get elected. But the work doesn't end there. Our work is really to build active citizens. Because if you build active citizens, even if whoever we put in power is not the kind of person they want, the citizens will always remove that person. So at the heart of our work is helping citizens find their work, find their voice, because we believe government should not be afraid. People should not be afraid of their governments. Government should be afraid of the people.
Thank you very much for that. Tracy, over to you, please.
Hi everybody, I'm Tracy Austin. I think that's a very hard act to follow, but I'll start off by saying that I'm actually although I work for an established company called Palladium and I'm targeting impact investing, I'm actually a startup within an established company. So I have some of the empathy about starting, and I have some of the understandings about having the pressure of finance on my own back. What I do at Palladium is essentially, Palladium's seen the opportunity that the aid world and how donor aid is being deployed needs to change. So we've decided to look at impact investing from the ground up. We're targeting SMEs, and I've started out in Nigeria and Ghana. And that's really trying to figure out what the need is from the ground up. And what I can say from our portfolio so far is it's all about finding not only well-priced local currency capital, but well-structured capital, and actually getting to some of your points, the message around that there are plenty of SMEs out there. They just can't expand because they can't get their hands on good structured capital. And if we've been able to, in about 2 years, come up with a pipeline in excess of 50 what we think are potentially investable deals, part of what we do as well is we build the ecosystem of co-investors. So our message is to go around to co-investors and to say, let's break some of the status quo, that it is about trying to get alignment amongst what we as investors think, and these are what the SMEs need. So we'll probably explore some of that further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adnan.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry to say that I'm on the wrong side of Africa because I come from North Africa. And this is one of the sentences that I heard this morning. So my interest is on social innovation and basically how can we convert young people especially from job seekers to job creators and then create value chain economies that promote, number one, inclusive growth and stability. Because whether we want it or not, if we don't have economies that are at the same time inclusive, that if they don't provide services, healthcare, education, we cannot attract investment and we cannot go to scale. So what I do is basically run programs to actually at the same time inspire people to create solutions that are disruptive, innovative, and at the same time that answer issues but with the high capacity to scale either nationally and regionally. And thank you.
Great, thanks very much for that. Obviously a very diverse set of entrepreneurs here. The key question is now a good time to start a business in Africa? Depending on where you are on the continent, you'll hear different perspectives based on economic state of the country, based on local support, based on investor interest. I'd like to get the thoughts of a few of you operating on different parts of the continent, including the only investor at the table, and see about your perspectives on the timing. Is now a good time to start off your own business? Are there opportunities to monetize on and to build into sustainable businesses? Alex, can I start with you?
Sure. Yes, for sure. It's the last frontier of the world, guys. Seriously. There's literally, I always say, you don't have to have a great business idea to go start a business there. You just have to have a good idea, stay persistent, and go. There's literally everything to do. So, you know, where literally every other place is developed, etc. When people say, "Hey, isn't it so difficult to go start a business in Africa?" Like, man, I have no competition there, you know? You can go in and all you guys, I see a lot of, I guess, potential entrepreneurs here and African entrepreneurs here that have been educated in, obviously, in Europe and in the first world. You guys have to take advantage of that education that you have and now go back and you're gonna be so strong and there's just so much to do that, once again, you don't need to have a great idea. You don't need to have the next Google to do it, you know? Like I've got friends that have just set up a good sandwich shop and they're making, you know, millions of dollars with a good sandwich shop because they're the only guys giving a good sandwich, you know? So seriously, if you guys go out, stay persistent, and you know, we were talking before about what the secret is to entrepreneurship, and you know, I was told this once, if you guys want the key, the guarantee to never fail as an entrepreneur, it's easy. Don't quit. Guaranteed success.
Good. ADEBOLA, can you comment on that? Because from a Nigerian perspective, you might find yourself in more challenging times than some of the other individuals here on the continent. Would you recommend people now to go back to Nigeria, launch their business, and have realistic hopes of becoming successful?
I think yesterday was the good time to go to Nigeria. And you know, I've had the privilege of speaking at Oxford, Harvard, and Columbia in the last 3 to 4 weeks. And when they ask me about opportunities in Africa, I get upset. And I say to them that you're not on the continent, you're far away. Why are you asking me for opportunities? Go home. Necessity is the mother of invention. When you get back home and you're right in the problems, in the mud, where diamonds are found, you will see problems to solve and you will create businesses that will remain viable for a long time. Everything I've done in my life for the last 16 years has been to solve a cultural tension. And that is why I'm still in business today. And so I think that beyond what we hear and the indices you see, problems are a part of opportunities. People want their problems solved. Why is e-commerce trending in Nigeria at the moment? Because we've got into a phase where people are looking for convenience. Why am I being quoted in newspapers about elections? Because opposition candidates want to win, and they've seen someone who somehow is able to turn it around. So whenever you're able to solve any problem, anywhere you're in the world, but most importantly for you guys in the diaspora, certain things are lacking on the continent. One of them is excellence. That is why we train engineers and we bring the Chinese to fix our roads. We train doctors, but we come here for medical checks. So how about you come home and set up your medical business? How about you come home and be the engineers? I said to you guys, you're like water to the continent. Diaspora is water to Africa. You have this, you've come here to learn, you have these big ideas. How about you bring it back home? I make this joke all the time. I said they deceived your fathers with whiskey and mirror, and they brought them here to work hard labor with their hands. They deceive you with running tap water and working train stations. And so because of the comfort, you willingly entered the slavery and built another man's continent. Now, I don't have a problem with that. Build for 5 years, build for 10 years. But come home with that experience, because you would always be a stranger. You would never be able to go home because it will never be built. So people like myself, people like Shewoni Bede, Otto Rondam, Adasakwe were in Nigeria. I mean, Adasakwe, for example, was working with the Agric Ministry. She started a juice bar in Nigeria because people are going on about the craze of health fitness at the moment. Right now, she has 4 juice bars. One of her juice bars was broken down last year because it was built in the wrong place. After that one was broken down, she has built 2 more because the business is good. So people are looking for excellence. People are looking for ideas, and people will pay for it. If you come, it will take time. Like every business anywhere in the world, it will take time. But you just come and do it. The things that I'm being paid for now, 10 years after, are the things I started 10 years ago. And people now say, oh, if I want young people, ADEBOLA is the person to talk to. And so I go into pitches, and there are people who have agencies for 20 years, 30 years. But I have experience in a niche area that I started when it wasn't cool. So don't wait for people to tell people. If I tell you about opportunities in Nigeria, that means people know it. That means people know it. So don't wait for that. Come into the mud and find your own diamond. And finally, funding is not your problem. It is very lazy for anyone to say funding is a problem. It's the laziest thing I've heard in my life. When I did my first event, the Future Awards Africa, which is 12 years today, when we got to the hall, the doors were shut because we were owing $200. 12 years on, I am here. By the grace of God, people come to offer me, oh, we will sponsor you. We want to, Shegun is not here in the room. Shegun Baje is one of my sponsors. They come by themselves and say we will sponsor. But when I started, for the first 6 years, I made no money. Del Santos was speaking there to entrepreneurs. She kept saying, start small, start small, start small. People always make funding the big. You just create a challenge for yourself. Funding is just there on its own. You will not be and say, yes, you're my problem. Whereas, no. The idea first, the passion and the drive. I define entrepreneurs as people who, despite limited resources, still make success of something. And it is inside every Nigerian in this room. I don't know about anybody else. But, we're born entrepreneurs in Nigeria. And we're born entrepreneurs because our entrepreneurship also comes from a cultural tension. We live in a continent that doesn't help you. So because of that, once you can click to hope, you want to push yourself and create. So that's why John Hopkins graduated 98 medical students, and 48 best top were from Africa and 28 from Nigeria.
Hope as the foundation for yes. A startup. It's an inspirational message. However, it doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't put food in your stomach.
I agree, but I trekked. Listen, I want
to invite the comments of Tracy here, because we want to talk a little bit about funding. Yeah. It starts with hope. Okay. But how do you get a business from an ambitious, energetic idea and an endless motivation to build the next Africa's unicorn into an actual sustainable business that creates employment and that can survive on more than just hope? What, from an investor angle, what criteria, what priorities do you need to see in young startups like the ones that ADEBOLA is describing now in order for there to be a potential for investment?
I'll just add to echo some of that sentiment. When I said, and I'm South African, and I said to my board that 2 years ago, and Palladium's an Australian-owned company, so some of my board members I think will struggle to point Nigeria out on a map, but I said to them we were going to Nigeria because of the various critical mass favorabilities we had, but also if we looked at where our business was strongest. And they said, okay, and when we started, we didn't have a lot of co-investors. A lot of co-investors thought we were very crazy. Ghana's a little softer and a little easier. I'm not saying it's easy, But 2 years in, I can tell you there's a huge change. Now people are coming to us and asking our points of view, and we are starting to share some of those deals. But the first thing we noticed, and bearing in mind we haven't found necessarily early startups, we found companies that are like startups. They've been probably in operation for up to about 5 years, and they need that expansion capital. So they're not true early startups. But what we do look for in all of them, and they don't have to go on to become unicorns necessarily, but what they do need to have is a big idea of scale. We need to see in them the potential to be taken out by a big corporate, to be grown, to have a bigger board, to increase their revenue incrementally. And if that self-belief at scale isn't there, we would say to them, you're doing a great job, continue what you're doing, but that's not our proposition. The other thing as an investor which we think about, and that's why an aid contractor like Palladium has come to this space, is we believe we've got to stop looking at finance in isolation. So if you look at what aid does, it's very soft, super early kind of equity, which doesn't necessarily need a return. If you were able to connect that to the next stage of funding, where there was a more synchronous way and people would working towards the same objectives, you could argue that that continuity is creating sustainability. Similarly, when I exit an investment, the idea is that a bigger, more prestigious, greater, better resourced piece of capital is going to come in and step into my shoes and help that scalable enterprise move up in the value chain. So it's really about an ecosystem as well.
Thank you very much. Adnan, commenting on sort of the francophone angle here, you made a comment before this panel started that, when we're talking about startups, there's a few countries that jump out. Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa often dominate the headlines. Mark Zuckerberg makes a visit to Lagos. We're still talking about that visit 2-3 months down the line. What is happening in francophone Africa, and how does that compare to some of the anglophone markets that are getting all this attention?
Well, I think I'll start with what Tracy said, and I think that most investors, especially in Francophone Africa, they come to us and say, but we are looking for well-established companies. We are growth stage companies, investors. We are whatever. The truth is that in most Francophone countries, there is either not or very few existing support mechanisms for early stage startups. And this is true because, and sometimes I feel sometimes offended when people ask me, I was like, what do you think about Africa? I would say, well, number one, you have tons of Africas inside of Africa. And then you have a very much a diverse linguistic, cultural, and a very different framework of understanding how business is done. So the challenge of access to early stage capital is tremendous. And especially if you talk about North Africa, it's actually almost non-existing. So it's very difficult to be able to start anything, and then at the same time you have traditional investors, traditional VCs, who for them a startup is a company that runs real estate. You would be shocked, but it's actually the truth. So the challenge for these countries is basically at the same time to diversify the pipelines of deal flow of interesting projects, and actually to outsource, or the opposite, downsource some of the ideas that exist in some of the disruptions that can create an ecosystem. And then last, not very important thing, but also culture. The culture is very much risk averse, even though challenges exist everywhere, but because there is a tendency of dependence of the state, and it's that the state should provide everything, that you have fewer and fewer people who would venture into entrepreneurship as a career. Except the elite. And then the change of paradigm that needs to happen is, number one, is in terms of culture, to kind of jump in more, and then having the relevant ecosystem players to be able to, at the same time, support people who would jump, and then get the relevant funding and the relevant support. And yes, funding is not an issue, but still is an important kind of pillar to be able to support people to kind of jump even faster.